Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We are going to be discussing office hours and rethinking the concept of office hours to improve the classroom for students. So my name is Carol Hernandez. I'm the Senior Instructional Designer at CELT, which is the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching at Stony Brook University. I have with me today two co-facilitators.
Hi, my name is Jenny Zhang. I'm instructional designer at South. Thanks for coming.
Hi, my name's Jenna Kim. I'm a postdoctoral associate at South. Welcome, everyone.
Okay, so also I just wanted to let you know we are going to be assisted today by a live transcriber, Noali Kasuga. And we just wanted to give a thanks to our Stony Brook librarian who prepared a LibGuide for today's session so that you have some resources to look at afterward. And we will be recording this. We're recording it right now. And we also have some slides to share with you. So we have the link there. As a team, we look at teaching and learning, and we look at ways to be inclusive to all learners. And so we look at all aspects of learning. And one of the issues that came up in discussions in our team was the idea of office hours. And we thought about, how can we make office hours more inclusive? And we ended up finding a lot of research about office hours. And so we decided we're going to talk about this. Our panelists are Deb Krieg, a lecturer in mathematics, Boyang Lee, a PhD candidate in economics, Devin Coots, a PhD candidate in philosophy, Mohammed Soban, an undergraduate double major in applied mathematics and statistics, and business. Welcome. Please take a moment to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you teach, and maybe how many students you typically have in a course that you teach. So maybe we can start with Deb.
Hi, I'm Deb Krieg. I work in the mathematics department. I teach anything from algebra, like any of our foundation courses and or what we call developmental math through the freshman calculus sequence. And my classes vary widely as far as the number of students, anywhere between 30 students per course, up to 250 to 300 in a room. This semester, I'm teaching pre-calculus, which I'm the course coordinator, and there are about 700 students in that course total.
Hi, everyone. My name is Boyang. I'm currently a PhD candidate in the Department of Economics, and I've served as teaching assistant for many undergraduate courses like Introduction to Economics or Mathematical Statistics. And I've also taught both in-person and also fully online courses at Stony Brook University. So for typical economic course, I have like 17 students in my class.
17 or 70?
Sorry, 70.
70. Okay, wow. All right, that's a lot.
Hi, my name is Devin. I'm a PhD candidate in philosophy. I was a TA at another university as well as Stony Brook, so I was a TA for large classes, and then when I became the instructor of record, I was teaching about 35 to 39. And then when I was a TA, I also would run smaller groups within the larger class. So my experiences with students about 20 to about 40. So, and I've only really been teaching philosophy courses.
It's basically to get a sense of, as an instructor, what you believe versus what you think or assume or understand students believe about. It's allowing you to check multiple options. Okay. All right. So basically that's where I was getting to is what instructors believe about office hours, and then how students see office hours, because that's where our discussion is going to go. So we did read the literature, and what we found is that there's a disconnect there. And so we're going to eventually get to that. All right. So I'm going to end the poll right now. And you can take a look at the answers and see where things line up. And we'll start with our first question for the panelists. So I'm going to start with Deb. And we're going to look at, let's start in the past, Deb. So tell us a little bit about when you first became a student, an undergraduate student, and what did you know about office hours, and did you use them, or did you feel intimidated or anything like that? Was it useful to you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Actually, it depends. I see it from both sides because I went to college right out of high school and was not a successful student. I had no idea what office hours were or any of the help resources. Then I went back as a non-traditional student and I used office hours all the time and found them to be extremely useful.
So when you went back, were you a little bit older and maybe you had worked a little bit, so you had a different reference point?
Yes, absolutely. I see my students now. I see that some of them really just don't understand what office hours are or the benefits. No matter how many times I plug it in class, they don't see it as a position of strength. They see it as a position of admitting that they're struggling, and that's embarrassing for them.
How about Mohammed? Can you talk a little bit about, so you're a second year student, and tell us a little bit about when you first came in, what did you know about office hours and how
So
did you view them?
basically, when I came in, I was like a pretty smart student in high school. So like I saw office hour as a sign of like weakness for me because I was like I was not ready to admit that I was struggling, even though I was struggling. But then I got used to it. I just told myself that instead of struggling on your own, maybe ask for help. And asking for help is not a sign of weakness, instead it's a sign of like bravery. And I saw my grade improving when I started going to office hours. And I didn't let like the factor of intimidation stop me from doing that. At first I was a little intimidated, but I think I got over it because my professor, like my physics professor from first semester, he used to do all the office hours right after lecture. So I would just stay and then ask questions.
Did any of your professors ever address that about being approachable or making themselves seem approachable, or any barriers that might be there?
I don't think so. It's just like they want you to show up. Like they encourage, because like they will post announcement on Blackboard like couple of times during the week when they have office hours. Like I'm gonna be holding my office hours at this time. So if you have any questions, show up. So I think they encourage to come to office hours as opposed to like not.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the hidden curriculum. So the hidden curriculum is sort of a set of assumptions about higher education. So maybe I know Devin's been reading up a lot on office hours. And sometimes we might have students that are first generation, or they're just coming in with no reference to what office hours are about. So Devin, can you talk a little bit about maybe what are some barriers there that students might experience?
Well, the first time that I encountered even the term the hidden curriculum was when I was doing research for some blog posts that I've been writing for CELT. And I came across it in Anthony Abraham Jack's article on two groups of students who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, one that he refers to as the privileged poor and the other the doubly disadvantaged. So the privileged poor are those students who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, but who got into some kind of prep school experience before college, versus the doubly disadvantaged who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds and did not have any kind of prep school experience. So he looked at their experiences at Harvard, and he found that the privileged poor were much more much more capable and confident and able to just jump in and go to office hours and talk to authority figures, and they knew how to advocate for themselves academically right out of high school. And he saw that the doubly disadvantaged were not as successful, and sometimes it took them years to catch up and feel confident and learn that they needed to reach out and talk to professors and ask for help and things like that. And a lot of the interviews that he conducted reported a similar sort of experience that Mohammed mentioned about feeling kind of weak for asking for help, or it seemed like sucking up or something like that. And it just took them a while to understand the new culture of a university that they never encountered before. And his suggestion is as simple as professors should just put on the syllabus what office hours are. That can be a very, very simple, very direct way of just educating students about, like, yes, these office hours are here, and what they are for is when you need help. It's just immediately they see the syllabus and have these instructions for, these are the reasons why you should go.
Yeah, that's good. That's one way to address it. What about in terms of, I don't know, just broadening it a little bit, like, you know, what are office hours good for in addition to going over the material? So some other benefits of office hours. So let's see, Deb. So you mentioned, we talked a little bit about when students are looking for letters of recommendation. Yeah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, when somebody asks me for a letter of recommendation, I like to meet with them and get to know them a little bit better. Perhaps a different kind of getting to know you than what I needed to know as a student. This way I could write a meaningful recommendation for them.
Yes, absolutely. So as we were looking at the research on office hours, one of the recommendations was to be explicit with students, to talk to them about not just coming to office hours for help or seeing it as an emergency situation, but to tap into letters of recommendation, information about jobs or internships, establish mentoring, get advice on careers, you know, collegiality, getting advice on the curriculum, the program. When you connect with a professor, that professor might recommend you for other opportunities. And so that's one thing that came up in the literature, is that office hours are more than just a resource for people students rather, who are in trouble. And yet students see it as sort of a last ditch, critical option. It's, break glass in case of emergency. In case of emergency, go to office hours. So yeah, so Bo Yang, can you talk a little bit about maybe, did you see any difference in office hours when you were teaching during the pandemic? Like, did you see more or less activity?
Sure. So during the pandemic, I've taught the fully online courses. And so for the office hour, we can hold the office hour in a variety of formats. For example, we can hold the virtual office hour by Zoom or by appointment. So I think I didn't observe like much difference in terms of like students' attendance, because I think before the pandemic, for the in-person office hour, I think some students are more engaged in in-person office hours, and they don't like the virtual office hours. But on the other hand, because we have a flexible schedule, for example, for the virtual office hour, we can set up a one-to-one meetings for students. And for the in-person office hours, they might have time conflict with the office hour schedule. So in that sense, some students might prefer virtual office hours. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, so I know some people had questions about office hours and how do I get students to engage more in office hours? And once we were in the pandemic, it opened up more opportunities for engaging with students. And I'm just wondering, maybe Deb or Devin, if you want to address this, did you find increased activity? Did you find, because there are more ways to connect, that maybe you saw more students?
That's what I would have thought. I would have thought that some of the one of the barriers for going to office hours is I have to be on campus and I have to find the room. I have to walk across to the other side of campus. That's 15 minutes. And so to be able to go on Zoom, I can, as a student, I could do this, well, 8:45, I can set up something like, because I start work at 9 or I start class at 9, I can even be in my car and just ask the few questions I have. But I don't really see them utilizing it as much as I would have hoped, the online office hours.
I noticed a similar thing. I taught both on Zoom and in person during the pandemic, and I didn't really notice a huge difference between students asking for Zoom meetings versus wanting to make an appointment to come talk to me in my office. Often, if the students wanted to talk to me, because I did have several students in my Zoom classes who did want to talk to me, but they would just stay on after the class ended. And I had a few students do that in person, but I think that Zoom was really helpful because they had that 10-minute window still where they didn't have a class yet. And on Zoom, I mean, all you need to do is click a button and you're in your next class, whereas in person, you might have to walk. So that's, I think, the only thing that I can think of for how Zoom might have made them more willing to stay after class. Maybe.
I was just going to add to what Devin was saying. I do find that I like having the option to create on the fly meetings. If somebody's emailing me about they don't understand how to solve a homework problem, and it's not really something that's easily explained via email, it's very easy to, and everybody since the pandemic is much more amenable to, well, in 15 minutes, can we just log onto Zoom and I'll just explain it to you? Yeah, great. I'll talk to you then. That has definitely been an advantage.
So I was going to ask Mohammed as a student, maybe you can give us the student preview. Did you find that the pandemic encouraged you to reach out to professors because maybe it was easier, or was it harder because now you're on camera and maybe you're home with your family in the background? I mean, for some students, being on camera is very stressful.
When I came here, like fall 2021, so like most of my office hours were in person. So I just went to the office hours in person as opposed to like on Zoom. But there was one class, like my economics class was on Zoom, but I think the Zoom office hours were a lot more better because I could be just joining that from like a quiet space. Instead of walking across like campus to the math tower and then going up. So I think it's better like Zoom hours because you could just pull up the slides and then the professor can explain the problem on the computer and you can just copy it down and you don't have to like walk. It's like a physical aspect of it, but I prefer Zoom office hours over regular office hours because I feel like you are more like engaged because of the pandemic. You're like used to it, Zoom thing, and then I feel more engaged on Zoom office hours as opposed to like in-person office hours. And then there's also like a factor of crowding people. You know how you have a lot of people show up at one place and it gets so crowded. So I think it's better to do Zoom office hours. You don't really like get crowded. And then most of my professor did like breakout sessions. So like it was like more one-on-one as opposed to like all like as a group. So that's my experience with that.
So your professors they would have so many students come to their office hours that they did breakout sessions in the office hours?
Yeah,
Wow.
like my calc professor did that last semester, and then my linear algebra professor did that too.
Hmm, that's really interesting. So I want to put this question out to everyone. What do your students usually want to discuss in office hours? What is the typical office hours meeting like?
Typically, it's homework. They have problems that they've already predetermined that they're not sure of. And I always put out a review sheet for the exam. And there's definitely an increase right before the exam of people wanting to go over the practice problems that I give them on the review sheet.
That's for solving problems. That makes sense. How about for example, in philosophy, what would a typical office hour look like, Devin?
Typically, students would only come either directly before an assignment was due or directly after. If they wanted to have me check over some things that they'd written or help them workshop an idea, they'd come to office hours, or afterward if they wanted to get a little bit more in-depth feedback, or if they wanted me to explain something that I said or plan for the next one to see how they could do better. On occasion, I had students come by and ask me my advice on other philosophy classes in the department, but mostly it was assignment help.
So in economic class, so typically students come to office hour for two main reasons. So one is that they need to prepare for an exam or homework assignment. The second reason is that they want to discuss or talk about their grades on an assignment. So also, like actually in my class, all course related questions are encouraged. And actually many students come to ask questions about the syllabus and or ask questions about the upcoming assignment.
Okay, so it sounds like really for all of you, office hours are really what's driving them is assignments, homework, not so much the other possible reasons like mentoring or professional development or career advice. That's not really happening.
For me, not really. I do also have, like what Boyang said, is people asking how they could do better on the next, or how could they be a better student and study more efficiently.
Yeah, people don't really come to me to ask for career advice because the students that I had were not really philosophy majors, that they were mostly coming from other disciplines. Sometimes I would have some students interested in philosophy just in itself and wanting to have a philosophical discussion, but that was quite rare. Other students in my department, other graduate instructors, have had more success talking to students, bringing them in, and having like group philosophy discussions. But many of my students were not interested in speaking to me about that.
So one thing oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think most students bring questions to my office hour. And honestly, for me as a student, I didn't attend the professor's office hour very often because I find sometimes I prefer talking to TAs instead of going to professor's office hour because I find that TA is more effective. Like in economic class, like the instructors, they may focus on the theory part, and they ask TA to, for example, teach students how to use some statistic software to do data analysis. So then if I have a specific question about coding or programming, so I'll directly talk with TA because that TA is more helpful.
I think that's why I go to office hours, because like my classes, like in the lecture, they focus more on theory. So like I go to office hour to see how we can apply the theory in like homework and other, like see the applications of it.
Yeah. So one question I have about with the TAs though, is that, do you think it's also because students might feel more comfortable talking with someone that's not, the expert, or it's just, it's an easier connection?
I think, yeah, because you feel more inclusive, if that makes sense. Like, you're like, it's like a power domination thing. You think the TA is like a less powerful person than a professor, so you just kind of be open with them that you don't understand a certain thing as opposed to like professor.
Mhm. So this is a quote from a study, one of the studies we read for this panel. And this is a student who says office hours are dependent solely on the approachability of the professor. Some professors make you feel like a burden for coming to office hours and interrupting their work, or they make you feel stupid for asking some questions or being concerned with your grade. What's your reaction to that?
I personally, I couldn't agree more. I think that really going to the professor versus because I've been a TA as well. And I think it really all comes down to approachability, like if the professor makes the office hours inviting.
I think that if a professor is uninviting and unapproachable and actively discouraging students from coming to office hours, then no student will feel comfortable going to that person's office hours. But I don't think it's purely a matter of making ourselves more inviting, because there are many other things going on for students for why they might not come. Like you can be very inviting. You can say every class, please come talk to me if anybody has any questions, anybody wants to have a conversation, anybody wants to talk about their future work or anything. I'll even have coffee for you. And many I know some professors who've done this and still had nobody showing up. So I think it's important to make yourself approachable, but that's not the only issue.
So Devin, what are some other issues? Like, what are some other possible strategies? If you could make some changes, what are some ideas?
Well, one of the major reasons that I read why students don't go is because they're just, oh wow, I just saw the chat. That's a terrible experience to have a professor slamming a door on a student. Wow, they would never want to go to office hours again. I think that making yourself inviting is probably one of the biggest things that you can do, and telling students what office hours are for. But then we also have to understand that students just are not going to be available, or many students are not going to be available at the time that you set for your office hours. So flexibility is another big uh, big thing that instructors can think about offering. I've seen some professors doing office hours purely by appointment and having them sign up in advance, or if not, maybe not on a sign up sheet or anything, but many have found success using online schedulers. So it's kind of in advance, but it could be it's just more adaptable to the students' schedules.
How about requiring office hours? Has anybody tried that, or anybody experienced that? So I've tried that, and I don't call it office hours, but my classes are small and they're graduate level, and I teach online asynchronously. So I require, before the pandemic, I would just call it a check-in, and I would do it on the phone. And then once the pandemic got going and everybody was on Zoom, I would do it on Zoom. And again, it was only 10 or 15 minutes right at the beginning of the semester, just to check in with each student and have a one-on-one conversation about any concerns that they had about the class. It was an assessment and research class, and people would always feel intimidated because those were two things that they weren't, some of them, just were not experienced in. So in that phone call, I would be able to answer questions and sort of put them at ease, and often they said to me, "You're the only instructor that does this," and they were appreciative. Just that one conversation. So I'm wondering, and I didn't give points for it, but I required it. It was like a required assignment. So I'm wondering if anybody out there has had that experience or tried it and seen any results.
I did for, I made it part of their final project. I wanted to have a 10 to 15-minute sit down with them to make sure, because they were picking the topic based on certain parameters, and I wanted to be sure that they weren't spinning their wheels. And it was very successful.
Yeah, I think Kara wrote in the chat that it's, or maybe it was Catherine, that it's hard to do with big classes. So if you have, 700 students like Deb does, that obviously wouldn't be possible. But if you have TAs, would it be possible to require that they touch base with a TA or with another student with some small assignment, like do a homework problem with another student and write something and submit it? Something like that. Would that be possible?
Maybe. I have enough issues trying to get my TAs to do the things that they're already responsible for doing, like grading. So I don't know if I want to take on that burden personally.
Right, right. Yes. And then Alex says, yes, she would love for her students to come in, but if all 90 students came to office hours in any one week, it would be rather overwhelming for sure. Okay, emails. Yes. So in the research also, students, one of the reasons that they said they don't go to office hours is because they can email their professor and get a response. So they were like, why go to office hours? I could just email them and get what I need, and that's fine. That's enough. But also, I should say, in the research, it shows that so there's a classic text. It's called The 7 Principles of Good Instruction by Chickering and Gamson. And the very first principle is encourage contact between faculty and students. So, and that doesn't have to be in person. It could be online or Zoom or phone or email, whatever. But contact with faculty has been shown to increase student engagement and academic success and sense of belonging, and increases the opportunities for access to internships, letters of recommendation, jobs, mentoring, all of that. So it is definitely something we should all be concerned about. And institutions, institutions support it, and I think instructors support it, and I think students that take advantage of it would support it, but there's still a gap, right? So I'm going to go back to my
I think
questions.
that
Yeah.
requiring office hours only works in small classes, or if you have a small enough class that TAs could effectively manage to help you with it. Like if you have a class of 700 students, I mean, you probably don't have an army of TAs. So even like if they're meeting with 50 students, that's still way too many for anybody to really deal with effectively. And I don't think we should assume that students will go to office hours for every class. I mean, students have to take classes that they're not in their major for. They probably wouldn't want to ask for recommendation letters from someone who is not in their major. They're just taking it for a distribution credit. But I do think that requiring office hours in the lower levels would be really helpful. Like in your first and second year, it would be helpful so that they learn what office hours are like and have that intimidation factor be addressed earlier when they get there, so that when they are in the position where they're trying to make connections with professors or get internships or whatever in their later years, then they'll feel more comfortable doing that.
That's a good idea. What would you assign a couple points to that? Like make it early in the semester, or how would you do it?
I know that I've read from some people who do require it that they give a multiple week time frame and have students sign up within like 3 weeks in the first 6 weeks of the semester or something, and have them come in and talk about their goals and their expectations and um, and how the professor can help them going forward. And then I think some professors had students come in more than once even. So once in the beginning and once in sort of the middle. At the end, I think no student would appreciate being required to go to office hours because everybody's so busy.
If I could ask something,
Sure,
Uh,
absolutely.
it's just something that Devin mentioned concerning that perhaps it's too much expecting students coming all the time to office hours. I teach courses at the freshman level, but I also teach courses for junior and senior students. And one thing I have noticed is there's a huge difference in attendance between freshmen. They do come to office hours, in contrast with juniors and seniors, which they don't come as often, rarely come, I would say. Has anybody have a similar experience, and is there an explanation for that?
Well, I would say there is a lot of research on those early years, especially first year experience, because students are sort of transitioning into this new life for themselves. It's a critical period, and so they might be coming because they recognize they're in a different environment and the standards are different than maybe what they experienced in high school. They have a lot more independence, and so they realize they need more guidance. So they might be coming, more of those freshmen and sophomores might be coming in because of that. And that's good. That's really good. I'm just thinking maybe, those upperclassmen might be feeling like, well, I know how this game is played and I don't need to keep coming in. I don't know. That's my theory. Does anybody else have thoughts on that?
I've had the opposite experience where maybe freshmen don't realize the importance and the benefits that they can get from office hours. Even like I see the difference between Calc A versus Calc B, where in Calc A, they're not as likely to come to office hours, whereas in Calc B, they realize I'm not going to get by without asking questions, and they're more likely to go to office hours.
That's a good point. I think too, I'm thinking about my own undergraduate experience. So by the time that I was a junior or senior, I was really thinking about graduating and working. So I was coming more to talk to my professors because I was thinking about internships, jobs, going on interviews, things that I needed some guidance on. So Fernando, I don't know if that is helpful to you, and I don't know if that's something that you could be explicit with your students about, like, hey, you're a junior or senior and you're getting ready to graduate.
In chemistry, I wouldn't say it's every student, but by the time they get to be juniors or seniors, many of them are already doing research in labs with their own advisors. And perhaps that's the reason why they don't need extra advice on what's going to happen in the coming years, perhaps. I don't know, but it's a good point. Yeah.
So we've gotten to the final quarter of this discussion, and I'd like to open it up to our audience. If you have questions or ideas or suggestions for how to improve the office hour experience for students. Please unmute yourself. Reframing office hours. Oh, Sam raised his hand. Sam, please go ahead.
Oh, no, I really wanted to say thank you very much for organizing this. As a writing teacher who has a very small class, requires rewards, and lets students lead the office hour discussions, and in being in a field that really uses office, that takes office hours for kind of for granted, right? Small class, individualized attention. I really appreciate this discussion because I hadn't thought about some things. This was in my blind spot, but I got to think about a lot deeper and better about office hours. So I just wanted to register my gratitudes to the CELT and to all of the panelists and students. Because today I could see from my student perspective what happens when an undergraduate student comes into Stony Brook and they see on my course policy that 3 to 5 office hours are required. And I'm going to imagine, and from their perspective, what the hell that means, right? Scary, unnecessary, demanding professor, right? I'm going to look at it from their perspective, and I'm going to take the time to explain the hidden curriculum behind it. I'm going to take the time to really help students to make sense of it before they start coming to me. I know by the end of the semester, I take 2 surveys in my class. In the beginning, the survey shows that students really don't want to come to office hour. I knew that much, right? At the end, the question, did you like the office hour? Like, even unprompted in the course evaluation, they say, I love the office hour. It made a difference, right? I got to know you, you got to know me. And so just wanted to say thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
The variation seems to be very high. For Professor Krieg, it's nearly impossible. So I guess, right, I can't take it for granted for the way I do it. It's the variables seem to be really, really significant, like size, nature of the course, the power dynamic. Thank you for opening up all of these, open my eyes.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. So in the chat, people are talking about rebranding and calling it something else. For example, student hours. You might want to call it pick my brain, ask me anything, the doctor is in, troubleshooting, homework help, tutorial session, coffee with the professor. You might want to call it something else. And Sam, I love your idea of becoming more explicit about what it's for and how it can be useful. It's a resource for students. We're required as instructors, we're required to have office hours. And I think, you know, what you said, Sam, is sometimes we just maybe aren't thinking about it from the student side and how maybe they're perceiving what we're asking them to do. Check-in time, that's good. Anybody have any other ideas for rebranding or renaming it? So another suggestion is hosting office hours outside of regular business hours. Like, you know, evenings and weekends, you could do a Zoom or a phone call. Meetups, that's a good, I like that. Weekends, yep. Very good. Okay, so anybody else have any questions or comments they would like to get involved in right now? Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. So I'm going to go back to the panelists. I'm just going to ask them if you have one tip for the audience before we wrap up. What is one tip that you could give us about improving the use of office hours? So we'll start with Deb.
I would say educating the students about how it would benefit them.
Good. So being explicit with students about all the different ways it could help them. Okay, very good. All right, how about Boyang?
So I'll just to hold a flexible office hour in a flexible time because, for example, currently I hold office hours before or after the class, but I find that many students, they have time conflict with the schedule. So I have to reschedule the office hour. And I think if we can hold the office hour in a variety of format, like we ask students to send the email before to make an appointment or something like that, it might be helpful.
Okay,
Because
excellent.
sometimes students are quite busy. They have different classes. No.
Yes, absolutely. They are busy. Okay, how about Devin?
I would say it's important to not put a negative connotation on why students are not coming. Don't go in expecting or with like or don't go in expecting that or with the assumption that students just don't want to come or that they don't care about your class, but think about how you can reach them better where they are.
I like that. Yeah, don't assume that they don't care. They're probably just as busy as we all are. Mohammed, give us one tip.
I would say be flexible or like entices. Just give like an extra credit, like 2 points on exam if you show up one time a semester. I would say
Mhm.
that would like increase more like one-to-one interaction.
Okay, so incentivize it.
Yeah,
Okay, and be flexible.
yeah.
Okay, I like that. Very good. All right, so thank you so much. We're going to wrap this up. I just wanted to share with you the slides and some of the strategies that we identified. We identified reflect, reflect on your own expectations and your own assumptions. Maybe you secretly like having those extra hours to yourself so you can do your own research. Think about requiring it, think about reframing it for students, explaining what it is, rebranding it, calling it something new, and then repeating, right? Keep repeating throughout the semester. Okay.
Your rebranding idea is $1 million idea.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you so much. So I just wanted to encourage you all to come to our upcoming panel on imposter phenomenon. We're going to talk about imposter phenomenon and how students of color, according to the research, students of color may be at a higher risk for experiencing this and what we could do to mitigate that. Thank you. We want to say thank you to our director, Rose Tirada Esposito, and to our vice provost for curriculum and undergraduate education, Elizabeth Newman. Thank you to our CELT team members. Thanks to everyone who joined us, our panelists. Thank you. If you have any questions, please email me. And please, we would love to hear your feedback on this panel. If you walked away with anything useful, if you feel like we left something out, let us know. We use your feedback to create programs. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop recording now, and I'll hang around if anybody has any extra questions that they want to pose.